Hello, my love. I'm so happy to have you back on this podcast, because we've talked before, but not on this podcast.
I know, I'm excited.
I'm going to start with what is, and it's your, whatever this word means to you, but what is sacrosanct in your life?
Well, I mean, I guess just to start off, that life itself and every moment, I think, is where we're looking for, that being able to be in touch and in tune with the sacred in every moment, and what we might see as meaningless, I think, is like the potentiality that exists all the time. But I think that the awakening of that for me is often in beauty and nature and the small, subtle noticings of life, the way that the sun sets or the clouds move or the trees grow, the way that rocks poke out of the soil, and the way that cats ask for love. These are these tiny things that are so deep and powerful, I think, on just being in life. And then there's all the bigger things, of course, that feel so powerful: deep friendship and love and devotion to connecting spiritually and recognizing that one is a spirit and a soul and encompassing this body and moving through interacting with everything else that is alive as well and interacting with us in every moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, that's the purpose of this podcast, like that experience of the journey that you just took us in, of noticing and becoming aware of just how valuable, important life is, and how lucky, I use that word reticently, but how lucky we are to be alive, right? Like what a gift it is to have this life, this experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so often people, spiritual teachers will tell us that the key to it all is gratitude. And, that so many people have trouble awakening that gratitude or living in that gratitude. But that once you do and you realize, then it just flows through everything, and it actually opens your heart to more potential love and awe and wonder at just the awareness that you're alive and you're interacting on this planet with so much beauty everywhere that you go, even in the pain, even in the sorrow and the suffering, and the awareness of the troubling, deeply troubling things that we exist with here, that in some way there is a beauty to everything.
Yeah. And there's the painful, and then there's also the mundane. Often, I speak with people who are like, well, my life is wake up, feed children, ferry them somewhere, feed children, put them to bed, get up, and I can really see that, the conversation around like what gets in the way of understanding and really living from a place of knowing that life is sacrosanct. And for me, it's really about this coming back to the revelry in reality and the magic in the mundane. And yet sometimes it's really boring, and sometimes we get, myself included, so caught up in the capitalist colonial, doing and succeeding and surviving part of living, that we can lose touch with the magic and the beauty and the little things.
Yeah. Well, and so many are in such a state of survival and dysregulation and brain chemicals and body sensations are in a space where it is hard to connect. And it takes effort, it takes practice, and it takes really noticing if you can't do that. And if you can't do that, what's in the way? You know, if you can't be in your space and awaken that sensation, which sometimes is really hard to awaken that sensation of gratitude, appreciation, wonder, awe, all of these things. You have to go out of your way to do it.
And sometimes you have to really change your life. It's interesting. So as you're talking, like I want to say, and what do you do in your life to connect with that? And we will get to that. But like, as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, when I'm cold, I have no fucking reverence for anything. And that's not to say that the cold itself and snow is not beautiful, and that seasons are not beautiful, and that, you know, all of that, I absolutely get it. But if my body gets too cold, I go into shutdown and I can't feel anything anymore. And I like, it's a thing. And so was it convenient for me to move to another country? No, not really. You know, my family are there, my systems are there. I don't speak the language, like all of that stuff. Not convenient in the slightest. People can look at me and go, oh, you have such a glamorous life. And clearly, you know, you had the money and the privilege. And none of those things are actually true. You know, it was very inconvenient for me. But from that place of being warmer and freer and more regulated and more relaxed, and not actually being able to understand the language, and therefore being able to relax and not listen to everything all of the time, has been huge for that piece of being able to be in a body that is regulated and therefore able to listen and interact in the world.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You know, I live in Santa Fe and I live in the country, and I can't really see, or, you know, there's no interaction with my neighbors really. There's like, oh, there's a house over there and there's a house over there. And I need that. And that's also has been a lot of work and inconvenience to create that, and to see the things that I need, you know, to have be in love with someone who's living in Los Angeles, and to try, you know, just even being in Los Angeles for a little bit at a time. It's just way too much for me. It's way too much for me psychically and energetically, to the point where then I'm having to manage that, all of those sensations all the time. So I can't be as open and gentle with myself. And, you know, it's inconvenient. It's not easy. It would be much easier if I could just, you know, live with whoever, wherever, however, and probably save a ton of money off of having to live here. And knowing that there's certain things, I need a bathtub. Like, I just have a non-negotiable around this, and I need space to be able to make art. And I need space to be able to build little altars all over my house. And you know.
Yes. Yeah, and for me, it's like those things, or I need to not have to wear shoes. Right? Like it's really, I'm about to go back to the UK, and I still do, right? Because I also need variety, and I still need the solidity and the connection to my family, and I need to travel. You know, there are two very distinct parts of me that need socializing and then to be in hermitude. And to honor both of those parts of me has been a journey, because for the longest time, I think we've spoken about this before, I really believed I needed to choose. It's like, who are you? Are you this person or are you this person? Because it's highly inconvenient to be two very different people. And actually, by honoring both of those parts of me, they've been able to integrate. And I'm not two different people, and I don't have two different lives. I just am nomad. I am gypsy. You know, I need to be traveling.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the perspective, so I'm a highly spiritual person, right? And that's my purpose. That's what I'm here helping people with, spirit and energy and healing and all of these things. And so, but I'm also, there's a lot of normal, with me. You know, there's sort of, people have this idea that you become spiritual and then you're, oh, I'm no longer a muggle and I'm no longer one of those people. And it's, no, I like in normal things as well. And just going to dinner with friends and having fun and laughing and going dancing and, you know, sometimes having a fancy cocktail and, you know, enjoying things that some people think that they have to give up in order to have this very quote unquote ness of who they are, to take on this identity.
I think that's one of the things that you and I have connected over kind of with the most in all of this time. And you know, I can't speak for you, you can talk for you, but for me it's this, I never tried to be spiritual. I didn't go on a journey to like become a spiritual being or teacher. I find I personally have pushed very hard against being that because of the ephemera that supposedly comes with it, right? And so for me, so much of that journey has been like, you know what, I can be a spiritual teacher and have fancy nails. I can be a spiritual teacher and like go to a cocktail bar or stay in or make money or be in relationship or whatever those things are, right? And that has been such a part of my journey, has been deconditioning myself from the expectations that I see projected onto me that may very well have never even been there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely see it because people will say things like, oh, I wouldn't have expected you to be so like lighthearted and funny and, you know.
I think that that's offensive. That is the thing. Do you think I sit and all day and meditate? Like, yes, this is a part of my life. You're very funny. I think you're very funny and very
Well, I mean, it's I think then when you're talking about this, you know, idea of what brings the sacred, and so often we have this idea that it needs to be sitting around oming, or it needs to be this very specific kind of practice that we see other people doing, and it just isn't, because we're all so unique and we all have different connections to things, and what inspires that awe and wonder within each one of us is really different, and as it should be.
Yeah, and I feel like when people come to a place of seeking or a place of wanting a deeper connection with Great Spirit in some way, whatever name they want to call it, I see a lot of heads up, am I doing it right? You know, and kind of looking to me or to you or to other teachers or to guides or whatever, and being like, am I doing it right? And I really hope that we're in a time where people are starting to understand that your relationship with God is unique to you and that there is no way to do it right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. This is why we, you know, I spent the last few years really looking at what's going on in the spiritual communities, what's happening out there, where things that are working and things that aren't working, what's happening in medicine work, what's happening in healing, and wanting to really address that issue, that so often people seek healing, they seek spiritual connection, and then they just get absorbed into a community or a teacher or a ceremonial experience that needs to, that's the only way that they can engage with that. But I think it's really important that we remember that we are that, and that we can cultivate that every single day, and that you don't just go to ceremony and then that's the thing, the only thing, that's the place you go. I hear it all the time. I need to go back to ceremony so that I can reset, I can fill up, I can be able to do my work. And what I really hope that people can begin to awaken to is that, no, you are ceremony every day, and you are prayer. So we just created the Temple of Sovereign Prayer because we were like, well, what do people really need? Well, they need to understand that they are a sovereign prayer themselves. They get to pray, to figure out how they pray. And some people pray, at church on their knees, and some people pray in the forest with their arms open wide, and some people pray when they're sitting silently in stillness, and some people pray when they're dancing and laughing and drumming and singing. And we get to be our prayer.
I really, really see that. And I feel like this it's kind of outsourcing of connection is and uncomfortable and perfect, because this whole evolution over the last 10, 20, I mean, I'm 42, so however long I've been alive in this form, observing and watching, I really see that there has been an evolution with how we connect and where we go to connect. And I know that on my journey it was go be spiritual in retreat or in and then come back to my life, and they were separate things. And for me, the shifting of my life so that my life is art, so that it is prayer, so that the whole thing gets to be sacrosanct, may not be possible for everybody, but there is some kind of move towards integration in everybody's life. At least that is my belief, that there is a shift that gets to happen so that you're not compartmentalizing and outsourcing it, but are able to actually facilitate yourself in reconnection.
Yeah. I think it's really important for us to remember that that this has been trained into us for generations, thousands of years. We've been told that you're not allowed to have a direct connection to God, that you need to pay someone and you need to behave in a very specific way in order to have someone else intervene for you in your spiritual connection. And so it makes sense that even when you're disengaging from old religions, things that you've grown up with, or things that your parents, your grandparents engaged in, that you still are going to seek that same dynamic someplace else. Even though it might look different and dress different, your lineage inside, your ancestral holdings around that belief system are going to guide you to try to recreate that as a sense of safety. And I think it's something we get to address within ourselves when we're engaging with that, and notice.
I really see that. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important for people to, for me as well, I say people, for us to recognize how we can think that we are changing and evolving and moving, doing something different, but very often we're just changing the environment, and the external environment and the internal is still the same. And there's a piece of two things I kind of wrote down while you were talking, which is that's not to discount experience, but that there's a difference between an experience, going to someone with experience and going to an expert. Maybe it's like if you and I spend all of our lives in connection and in prayer and I'm not saying we do, but if it's a lot of time, right, the kind of 10,000 hours thing, then someone who is just starting out may very well come to me for me to share my experience from having repeatedly done something. But I'm not them, and I cannot give them their answers, but I can share experience. That piece came through. And then the other one's about community. It's like, okay, I'm saying find your own connection, but also that is one experience, but also communing, coming together is a totally different experience.
Yeah, I think both of those things are really important. Absolutely. And I know that for me, you know, being someone I've studied so many practices and different lineages and so I have all of these tools, right, that you can use for specific reasons. There are so many tools that you can learn to do things like shift your state of being, your mind, change your energy, clear yourself, disconnect from others in a healthy way. There's to cultivate energy, to have more power in your life, to clear organs, to come to better health. There's all of these things that you can do. And those are also dependent on where you're at and what you're working on and what your needs are. So yeah, it is really important to find people who can, you know, help you find the right tools and practices and things at the right time, because otherwise you just can get super overwhelmed by all the options and the things that there are to do and think that you have to do everything all the time when that's not the case.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I think I had a vision of my grandmother making tinctures, and I had, you know, and there's and cooking, and that was kind of her thing, right? And then I've got, you know, when I think of you, there are lots of different things that you do, but when I think of you, I always come back to qigong and energy work and cleaning organs and working with clearing and kind of that kind of work. And then there's another friend I've got who works very much with essential oils, and you know, we each have these kind of specialisms potentially, you know, or multiple. But I think what I'm also seeing in this world right now is that there's so many people, and some are authentic and trustworthy and have been around a long time and are right for you and some are great showmen, wonderful marketeers, and think they know it all and have been doing it 5 minutes. And then there's a plethora of stuff in between. And I think the hardest thing for someone seeking, for want of a better word, is who the fuck do you trust? And how do you know who to trust and who to go to and who's reputable and what they do and all of that? Do you have any wisdom on that?
You know, it can be really challenging, actually. It can be really hard because you think that a lot of people think that they can follow their intuition and they're not actually. Like, you know, there's fear, there's projection, there's desire, there's all of these things that get in the way of that. And like you said, there are a lot of people that, some of the people that I've experienced, because I've helped a lot of people who've been harmed in spiritual community and by healers, and those people have spiritual understandings. So they have some spiritual wisdom that they have, and they have some education, and they have some energetic power. And so when you put those three things together, and you can really mask a lot of intentions that aren't very good. So, you know, a lot of times people will experience, oh, someone led this meditation and it was so powerful, or someone did this energy work and it was so powerful, or they channeled for me, or they read my chart, or, you know, they knew this oneness speak that they could, you know, say. So why wouldn't I trust them? Of course they're trustworthy. but none of those things actually make someone trustworthy, which is kind of a horrible lesson to have to learn on this journey. I do actually on my blog, I do have a blog post. I think it's one of the more recent ones that's on the red flags of spiritual community red flags and things that sometimes teachers will do and sort of sneak in. And then you can notice when that stuff is happening, because it can be really insidious. It can be subtle. It can build up over time, that people are able to draw you in and then take advantage of you in some way.
Yeah, thank you. I'll put a link in the show notes to that blog, because I think it's really useful. And I don't want to scare people. And I think there's a lot of great people out there. And I believe that sometimes having a hard time coming up against some harm is part of the journey and part of our own healing, part of allowing us to see or be more aware. And if everything was really easy all of the time, and if we only met great teachers that were perfect for us, would we learn how? I don't know. It's not.
I agree with you. And having supported people, I do know that oftentimes going through meeting up with somebody like that, it transforms them in a way where they're able to step into their power and understand their intuition and their sovereignty and their discernment at a level that they never would otherwise. I don't wish a lot of these experiences on anybody, because they can be really painful and very challenging. But I hope that, especially if anybody's listening to this and you're like, wow, I really got burned by somebody in whatever way that was, that you're able to go deeper into your own healing and really awaken your own personal power through that process, because it is possible. I've seen it over and over again.
Yeah. I before we started recording, like I said, I've been in this world pretty much my whole life. My parents were in it. It has been my way of, it's been the water in which I have swum my whole life. And I was sharing with you that last year I had an experience which I was blind to right up until it happened. And so it can still happen no matter who you are. And for me, there was a deeper awareness and a deeper understanding of a pattern at play that I was then able to take my power back from. And a lot of people are talking about how awful this industry is at the moment, and I still have really deep love for it. And I think as something grows, there will always be a period of things being really pretty problematic, but that doesn't mean that we need to burn it onto the ground.
Yeah. And I've had incredible teachers, and I've had incredible teachers that had some personality issues, because they're humans and they still are humans. And sometimes they make mistakes and they are messy and they don't see things about themselves in the world. And, then I've not really had really super horrible teachers, but I've had some that have done some very problematic things that have caused me to know that I would not work with them again. So it's such a spectrum. And for the most part, most people do have good intentions and good hearts and are doing the best they can, and they're humans. And then there's some other people who see opportunities, because this is a space where people are seeking and searching. And anytime people are seeking and searching and hurting, then there is a vulnerability there.
Yeah. And I also have, myself included, worried that I am doing harm, or that there's some, you know, and I always want to kind of say to people, again, we are human. I have bad days. Sometimes I may have read the room wrong, or offered something wrong, or, you know, or not been the right, not hit the right note in the right moment. And for me, the difference between something that is problematic and something that isn't is the ability to step back and say and see both perspectives, and to apologize, and for it to be a conversation, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, that's proof that you're not a sociopath, right? That you're like, am I doing harm? Because that's the question. Like, okay, am I doing harm? And it's great to ask that question of yourself and to notice that it's there. Oh, could I have done that differently? I've messed up. I've done dumb things and overstepped, you know, used too much power or too much force in a situation or whatever. And I think it's a really powerful thing when someone can look at themselves, say they're sorry, and just admit, oh, I could have done that differently, you know?
I had an experience of doing that recently where I said exactly that. I misjudged the situation, and I came in with a little too much machismo, and what you needed was a little more femme, and can't take it back. Right? Like I can apologize for it, but I can't take it back. So
Yeah. That's good. You're not a sociopath.
Thanks. I mean, I wasn't worried. Being able to talk about it, because I think if I was, I probably wouldn't bring it up in this conversation.
Exactly.
You mentioned that you work with people who've been through harm. You also teach yourself, and if there are people who are wanting to come from a kind of more practitioner place, you have offers for them. And do you also do kind of healing work one-to-one as well? Feel like
Yeah. I mean, I do so many things. Most of my clients are practitioners of some kind. So they're therapists or coaches or healers, shamans, channels, and so on. So I do a lot of training programs for spiritual and energetic development. But yes, I also do one-on-one work, and I do a lot of mentorship over 6 months and helping people really discover what their gifts are, and the things that they need to thrive and move forward and do their work, really, because I really am passionate about all of us stepping up and being who we are in the world, whatever that looks like. And sometimes that looks like, oh yeah, I am a healer, I am a channel, or I am moving in this direction or serving medicine. And sometimes it means I'm being a better parent and a better partner, and figuring out how to contribute to my community in some beautiful way.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Two things. I'm going to make sure the links are in the show notes so people can click through. But if people want to come and carry on this conversation with you, or are intrigued by what you've shared, where's the best place for them to come?
I mean, wow. Generally, I mean, everywhere, right? So my website is a really easy place to get in touch with me and email me or set up a consultation. And then my personal Facebook page is a place where I post things there that I don't post anywhere else. So I often am just like having conversations there a little bit more. And of course, Instagram and YouTube. And I also have a podcast, Shaman Sister Sessions, which has tons of content, especially for people who feel like they're on this path.
Fantastic. Well, I will click all of that through. And then in our Sacrosanct Secrets episode, I'm going to talk to you about serving medicine, and that like who should be doing it, who should not be doing it, and the things that you have noticed. That kind of, I don't know where the conversation will go, but that is what.
Great. That's exciting.
Thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you. This is awesome.